Welcome back, guys. I'm Zell, and today we're going a little retro. A few weeks ago, we talked about the Buck 501 Esquire, now called the Squire, but this is an Esquire from the late 70s, early 80s. And this one was at one time my dad's. But here recently, a friend of mine wanted to have his knife sharpened, so we're turning this into a From the Sharpening Bench video, I guess. And he happened to have a 503 Prince. And I thought it would be kind of neat, first off, to just do a little quick comparison between the two knives. And whenever I was sharpening this thing, I thought, well, there's got to be a lot of differences between those, because there's, like 30 years difference in production date. The Esquire was produced in the late 70s, maybe the early 80s, but probably the late 70s. And this one is marked as being produced in 2015. So there's got to be differences, right? Well, we'll roll them around here and see if you can spot the differences. On this side, besides this one being about worn out, the pins are smaller on the older knife. Not a lot of difference. The metal material here feels and appears the same. We roll them over to the back. Both still just very well put together little knives. This one's about worn out and doesn't fit flush anymore, but this one being only a year old, it's nice and flush. And, there's just not much difference, except the blade steel. The older knife has 440C, the newer knife has 420HC, and we'll talk about that here in a minute. But for now, let's move this old guy out of the way, and let's talk a little bit about this 501 Prince. Now, this was a knife I knew existed, but I had never really messed with. A lock back this small for me, it just wasn't something I wanted. But for some of you out there, this thing may be just about perfect. It's about 3.5 inches long closed, and only about 0.36 inches thick, so it's really, really small, and it weighs under 2 ounces. And even at that weight, we get a blade that's about 2.35 inches long. So, for those of you that are looking for a lockback that you can let ride down in your pocket that's really, really tough, these knives are great for that. We have our 2.35 inch, very, very high hollow ground blade. That blade is just, it's built to cut, and it does it. It does a really, really good job, just like the larger Bucks in the Classic series. And Buck does a really good job with these knives, keeping everything symmetrical, keeping everything looking and working the way it's supposed to. My only beef with them is they don't ever give us any sharpening choil back here, and I gave my buddy the option, but he chose not to have one put in. So let's get a look at this. This is a 2015 production knife, but it has been riding in his pocket every day, and he's been building a house and doing a lot of other things where he's had all kinds of stuff in his pocket, I'm sure, including keys and whatnot. And this is what we end up with. It's beat up some, but it doesn't look too awful bad. The other end's about the same. In the back, it's still pretty smooth. It's got some in there. But that's one of the beautiful things about these little knives. You can pick them up, put them in your pocket, and they will take a beating. Unlike some of our newer knives with all the super light materials and titanium and all these other things, these old lockbacks are built tough. And they're designed for that. They're designed to be stuck in your pocket, get beat up some, and the actions still do exactly what it's supposed to do. And this one has even went to the extreme. He handed this one to somebody, and somebody popped a bottle top off with this area right here. And I went back in with some jeweler's files and straightened that back out. But even after that, the knife still functioned. It's a little tight, but it functioned. And like I said, that's kind of what you get out of these. They do their job for a long time and without much fuss. There's not a lot of upkeep. Oil the wood every once in a while. I cleaned up all the metal on the knife, but that's not even necessary. And keep the blade sharp, and that's really about all you got to do. Drop oil every now and then, and you're in good shape with one. However, the one thing that most of the modern knives give us that these don't is you have your nail nick here. So it's a two-handed operation to open the knife. And then with the lock bar release being all the way back here, it's a two-handed operation to close the knife. So you lose a little convenience and you gain some toughness. So what we end up with is a knife that's been in continuous production for decades. And because of that, the quality is there. These knives are well built. This 503 Prince is built just as well as this 501 from the 80s, maybe the 70s. My biggest issue is we've dropped 440C for, whatever reasons Buck had, and we picked up 420HC, which is not a bad steel. 420HC gets the job done. However, if you want something better, you've got to go all the way up to the 501, what they now call the Esquire, to get S30V. And then Buck makes kind of a big deal on their website and in their literature about S30V being hard to sharpen. And, opinions may vary on this, but today S30V I don't think should be considered hard to sharpen. If you want to look at hard to sharpen, let's look at M390, S110V, S90V, some ZDP 189. Those are harder to sharpen. The S30V, not so bad. So I really think Buck is, maybe they are trying to warn their customers, and maybe they're trying to ward them off from getting the S30V blades. Not sure. But I really wish that they would offer both of these knives, and the whole line of classic lockbacks, and maybe some 154 CM, or even better, some CPM 154, or any of that type of steel. Something that hits that mid-range a little better than 420HC. Anyhow, guys, 503 Prince. The smaller, lighter brother to the 501 Esquire. And pretty nice little knife. I'll throw the card up here so you guys can see the specs on it. I really appreciate you guys stopping by. Don't forget to hit that like, share, and subscribe button. And you guys have a great day, and I'll see you next time.